morning, everyone. Can I remind you all that this meeting is being broadcast live over the internet, so we're all on camera. Please be aware that you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking, and please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. This meeting is available to view online now and in the future, whenever people want to watch it. We welcome the use of Welsh language at meetings. I have no requests for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. I'd like to welcome everyone attending the meeting today and everyone watching the meeting via the webcast. Please can all mobile devices and other noisy devices be put on silent. If there's an emergency alarm, follow the green signs and go to the ground floor of the Civic car park. Right, first of all, we've got agenda item 1, which is attendance and apologies. Are there any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillors Cathy Evans and Raymond Williams.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Anybody got any interest to declare?
We're on the phone regarding the consultation with South Wales Fire and some of the planning.
I'm on the planning committee too, so I declare an interest, non-prejudicial interest.
Thank you. We'll go straight on to the agenda item 3, which is minutes of the licensing committee, 14th the 11th 2019, which are on pages 5 to 12. Everybody happy that these minutes are a true record?
Yes.
Thank you. Now we go on to agenda item 4 now, which is taxi licensing fees. I'll hand you over to Claire. These can be found on pages 13 to 34.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So we've got 4 reports to bring to your attention this morning. Report number 1, agenda item number 4, is in relation to the taxi licensing fees. So the purpose of the first report is to inform members of the proposed fees for the period 2020 to 21 for taxi fees, which will fall to the licensing committee for approval. A report came to you in November of last year seeking approval for consultation on proposed taxi licence fees. In March 2019, the committee was informed of the legislative process for fee setting and the guidance in case law that informs this process. The proposed fees have been calculated to represent the actual costs of delivering each licence service based on the best available evidence and information. However, in practice, the proposed fees slightly underrepresent the actual costs, as costs for the period 19 to 20 have been used, as opposed to 20 to 21, as those costs are not yet available. Section 4.4 of the report gives you an indication of the number of Hackney carriage licences, private hire vehicles, drivers and private hire operators that this authority currently licenses. In November 2019, the committee agreed that taxi licensing fees should be consulted on, and the fees shown are in Appendix 1 of your document, which is page 19. Following approval for those fees to go out to consultation, a statutory notice was placed in a local newspaper, as required by the law, and a letter was sent out to all licence holders advising them of the proposed fees. One response from the trade was received, and a copy of this response is attached at Appendix 2, which is page 21 of your bundle. If I can refer you to page 21, which is Appendix 2, the person that has written in has stated that they are writing with regards to the increase in licence fees and that they are opposed to this as I don't feel an increase is justified at this time. Members may wish to consider previous concerns made by the taxi trade, which include that increases in licence fees place a burden on the trade and on fares. Socio-economic factors and the competitive nature of the trade mean that fee increases cannot always be passed on to customers, and that there are differences charged in the fees charged by neighbouring authorities. In August 2019, the contracts that we have with the garages in relation to taxi testing was changed. Previous to this date, taxi drivers paid us direct for the taxi tests that the vehicles had to undertake within the year's period. Now those fees are being given direct to the garage, so the driver has, the cost is being spread out over the year for the driver. 5.6 of the report, page 15, highlights that the majority of the calculated fees remain largely unchanged from before, and this reflects the fact that the licensing team have sought to work efficiently and effectively in delivering both the administration and enforcement elements of the licensing function. Appendix 3, which is page 23 of your bundle, gives a comparison of the proposed fees for Torvine in relation to neighbouring authorities. You will note that there are some differences, but this could be due to a number of different reasons, including some authorities may not be calculating full cost recovery, the ways in which the costs are calculated may differ, the work upon which the fees are based may be different, and many of the underpinning activities and costs are the same whether there are 2 licences or 200. Nevertheless, the fees proposed are in line with those charged by neighbouring authorities. Members have previously agreed a reduction in fees for wheelchair accessible vehicles, which is currently £80 in respect of new applications and £70 for renewals of licences. Members are asked if they wish to continue in offering a discount, and if so, to what level. A discount would be beneficial in demonstrating our support for the provision of wheelchair accessible vehicles, but any discounts would need to be funded and cannot be recharged to other licence applicants. There are currently 19 Hackney carriages and 5 private hire vehicles that would fall within this category. The introduction of the Air Quality Taxis and Private Hire Vehicles database regulations show that clean air is becoming a national priority in terms of transport provision. Members are asked if they wish to offer a discount in relation to electric vehicles, and if so, the level that they wish to agree. So consultation has been carried out with the trade. A notice has been put in the local newspaper as required by law. And we've been working very closely with our finance team to ensure that all the costings that we base our fees on are correct. Point 8 of the report, there are risks that have to be identified. Local authorities may be criticised in the press or taken to judicial review in respect of any licence fee increases, and this needs to be balanced against possible criticisms where local authorities fail to fund services needed by licence holders or to protect public safety. The evidence upon which any proposed licence fees are based will be retained for 7 years, in case there are any queries or judicial review. Any suggestions or directions of the committee will be followed by officers. So to conclude this report, licence fees in relation to Hackney carriage and private hire licensing have been proposed and have been subject to public consultation. We've had one response, which is attached within your bundle, and members are asked to approve the proposed fees for 2020-21 following that consultation, taking into account the response received. It is recommended that members consider the licence fees and either 1, approve the proposed fees, or 2, should you not approve the proposed fees, indicate the amended fees that should be consulted upon. And 2, indicate whether a reduction in the licence fees in respect of disabled access vehicles and or electric vehicles should be offered. That's my report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I asked, with the Appendix 2 and the complaint with the door signs,
Yes.
are we looking to change them in some format if there is quite a high number of ones peeling off?
To date, we have only received one other complaint in relation to the door signs, and that is a matter that we are looking at as a licensing team.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Just looking at the examples on Appendix 3, we seem to be
roughly in line with Caerphilly, generally speaking cheaper than Blaen y Gwent. However, I noticed that there are a lot of gaps in the Monmouth fields, you know, nothing for replacement door signs, nothing for replacement badges, nothing for replacement paper licenses, nothing for... So I'm assuming, I mean, I know Monmouth quite well. They probably don't have that many taxi licenses there. Would that be a correct assumption?
I'm not sure, sorry. I don't know how many licence holders that Monmouthshire currently have licence. The information on Appendix 3, which I've provided, was information taken from each council's website. So unfortunately, I can't give you numbers in relation to how many licences Monmouthshire issue. I can certainly find out for you and provide you with that at a later date if you so wish.
Thank you, Councillor Mills.
The fact that only one person's objected it would indicate that most of them are quite happy with it, and therefore I'm quite happy to propose that we accept the fees as they're laid out.
Thank you. If everybody's happy, then we'll go to page 17. The recommendations on page 17 is item 12.1. So, are you all happy to approve the proposed taxi licensing fees?
Yeah.
Yes? All happy? Thank you. So we go to 2.
Is there an issue with the electric?
We're just going to that now.
Oh, right.
Right, so we go to item 2, indicate whether a reduction in the licence fee in respect of disabled access vehicles and or electrical vehicles should be offered. Are we all in favour of that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Right, we'll now go on to agenda item 5, which is approval of consultation on review of Licensing Act 2003, the Statement of Policy for Implementation 2020. Which you'll find on pages 131 to 150.
Thank you, Chair. So the second report that I'm bringing to you for approval starts on page 35 of your bundle, which is in relation to the approval for the consultation on the review of the Licensing Act 2003 Statement of Policy, which is due to be implemented on the 2nd of November 2020. The Section 5 of the Licensing Act requires a licensing authority to prepare and publish a statement of its licensing policy every 5 years. It has been nearly 5 years since the last policy was approved, and this report sets out the procedure and proposed updated statement policy for prior to consideration at full council. So before determining a policy for a 5-year period, the licensing authority must consult with a number of responsible authorities, which are Chief Officer of Police, Fire Authority, etc. And they also have to consult with the trade. So we have to ensure that any consultation has to be done in line with representatives of holders of premises licences, club premises certificates, personal alcohol licences, and any other person or representative of businesses and residents in the area. 4.3 of the report outlines that the authority must have regard to the Home Office guidance, which is issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act, when making and publishing its policy. This guidance gives us the structure that we have to follow. The revised policy for Torfaen has to be in place and ready to be commenced on the 1st of November of this year. And a review of this policy was considered and conducted with members of the Gwent Licensing Forum, which is made up of council licensing officers, police licensing officers, officer from Public Health Wales, covering the areas of Monmouthshire, Torfaen, Caerphilly, Blaen y Gwent and Newport. The proposed policy has been endorsed and approved by the Gwent Licensing Forum, with the aim of all 5 authorities adopting the policy late 2020 or early 2021, depending on the authority's 5-year adoption and revision date. Part 5 of your report outlines that any revisions to the policy has been highlighted in red. If you have printed out the consultation document in black and white, it's the fainter of the 2 texts. Taking into account updates on the implications of alcohol and drug harm within Torfaen, which has been provided by Public Health Wales. And this in turn will highlight the need for the licence holder to put measures in place and to work in partnership with statutory officers under the Act. Section 5.3 of the report outlines the timetable for the adoption of the policy. So today we are bringing to you the draft version of the policy for consultation approval. This will then be followed by a 3-month consultation on the Licensing Act policy, whereby the responsible authorities and representatives of the trade will be written to, and they will be advised that we're now in consultation on the revised document. Information will also be put on our website to advise of the consultation. It is then intended to bring to you in July. We've now had the dates confirmed for future committees. A revised, updated document taking into account any comments or responses that we've had in relation to the 3-month consultation. It is then proposed that the final version of the policy goes to full council in September, ready for implementation on the 1st of November. And a draft version of the licensing policy is attached at Appendix A of this bundle, which starts at page 47 of your bundle, going through to pages 129. So as mentioned previously, consultation will take place with our responsible authorities as defined by the Licensing Act. It will also take place with representatives of the trade, both licence holders, club premises certificate holders and representatives of personal alcohol licence holders. It will also take place with local councillors. Notices will be put on the website, and as stated, councillors and town and community councillors that have been previously involved will also be consulted. There are risks to the local authority. They may be criticised in the press or even taken to judicial review, where policy changes are seen as unreasonably burdensome on the licensed trade. However, this needs to be balanced against possible criticisms where local authorities fail to protect the public. The suggestions and directions of the Licensing Committee will be followed. So to conclude, Section 5 of the Licensing Act requires a licensing authority to prepare and publish a statement of its licensing policy every 5 years. This needs to be in place for commencement on the 1st of November. Members are asked to consider the proposed draft Licensing Act statement of policy prior to public consultation and to approve the commencement of that consultation. It is recommended that the Licensing Committee approve the commencement of the consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor?
Two if I could, Chair. One's on page 77, and it appears, if I've got this right, because it's in light grey, it isn't a change, it is a red. And it's 18.1, and it says, is entitled to work in the UK, has an approved qualification? What would that be?
Yes, it's a requirement when somebody applies to us for a personal alcohol licence that they have an approved qualification. So the approved qualification is a 1-day course that the applicant has to sit. It's a course that they sit throughout the day, and then there's a multiple choice series of questions at the end. That person has to pass that qualification and provide us with documentary evidence to show that they've got that qualification, as that's part of the application criteria, and that's specified in the actual legislation.
Question 2, if I could, Chair. Page 81, 21.10. The licensing authority may notify the council's event safety advisory group. I was unaware we had one. Who are they and where do they sit, and how would we contact them if we needed to?
The Safety Advisory Group is a group that sits once a month, which I participate in, and they look at larger scale events on council-owned property.
Okay.
Again, if you would like some further information about that group outside of this meeting, and it's on our website as well.
All right. If it's on the website, we can look it up. That's lovely. Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Mills? Thank you. If you turn to page 38, the recommendation is on 12.1. It is recommended that the Licensing Committee approve the commencement of the consultation of the Licensing Act 2003 Statement of Licensing Policy. Are we all for that? Okay. Unanimous. Thank you. Right, we now go on to agenda item 6, which is approval of proposed fees. That's on page 131 to 150.
Thank you, Chair. So the third report that I'm bringing to you today is approval of the proposed fees for the period 2020 to 2021 for Gambling Act fees, film classification fees and hypnosis fees. So point 4 of the report, certain licence fees are deemed to be non-statutory in that local authorities can determine what or whether to charge. This report refers to the licence fees in respect of statutory licences falling to the authority for determination, namely gambling, hypnosis and film classifications. The background and methodologies used around licensing fee setting has previously been used to determine a range of licence fees agreed by this committee. The calculated licence fees are intended to be a fair reflection of the actual costs of administering and enforcing the licences, in much the same way as anyone would expect to pay a reasonable price for a service they receive. However, it's not possible to achieve full cost recovery in terms of overall licensing functions because some activities do not relate directly to the administration and enforcement of licences. For example, the costs of providing information and advice, investigating and acting in respect of unlicensed premises are excluded from the fees. Also, statutory functions such as FOI, Freedom of Information Acts, are not part of the licensing regulatory function, and these costs must therefore be funded by the authority in another way. The calculated costs are based on costs calculated for 2019-2020, as any pay award will not be finalised, and other costs for 2020-2021 cannot be fully calculated in time to be applied to the fees calculations for the forthcoming year. General fee setting principles outlined in section 5.1 of this report outlines that fees are reviewed annually using the following steps. The fee setting process itself is reviewed to ensure it remains valid, taking into account any changes in law, guidance or case law. The underlying data determining the fees is reviewed, and in particular, each licence process step will be reviewed to ensure that the time calculated to take and undertake each step remains accurate. The Authority Finance Department will be asked to update staff hourly costs, including on costs, and other costs such as IT, specialist equipment, etc. will be reviewed to ensure they remain relevant. The cost calculator is then updated to calculate any changes in fees using the Wales Licensing Expert Panel spreadsheet, which is used throughout Wales for all local authorities. And this is recommended by the Local Government Association. For each type of licence, 3 main elements are calculated. The underpinning costs, which includes costs incurred by the authority to establish any policies, procedures, fee setting, specialist equipment, etc., without which each type of licence cannot be delivered. Number 2, specific licence steps relating to each type of licence, from any initial advice given through to the administration and the approval of that licence. And 3, the hourly operational cost to the authority for each officer, provided by the departmental finance team, which includes wages, on costs, etc. The actual cost of each underpinning activity and specific licence step is calculated using the hourly rate, thereby ensuring that each licence applicant pays a fair licence fee depending on the time taken to process and deliver each type of licence. Section 5.2 refers to gambling licences, which are issued to the Gambling Act 2005. The proposed gambling licence fees are attached as Appendix 1 to this report, which is page 137 of your bundle. And a comparison table with neighbouring authorities is attached at Appendix 2, which is 138 to 139 of your bundle. The number of gambling premises licensed in Torfaen are currently as stated in section 5.2.3. So we have 9 bet-ins, this is your betting shops, 2 adult gaming centres, so these are your machines, where all machines are, and 2 bingo premises. Film classifications. Under the Licensing Act, local authorities may be asked to classify films for viewing. This authority, to my knowledge, has never received a request for the classification of a film, but other authorities in Wales have received such requests, and it seems prudent to have a fee structure in place should that need arise. The calculated fees are based on estimated timings for film classifications. However, these would be reviewed if and when an application is received to ensure that we are receiving full cost recovery. The proposed film classification licence fees are attached at Appendix 3, which is page 140 of your bundle. Neighbouring authorities do not currently have fees set for this function, so no comparison is therefore possible. No applications are expected, but we would rather have a fee structure in place so we are ready to deal with that should a request be received. 5.4 refers to fees for hypnosis permits. Again, as far to my knowledge, this authority has never received a request for a hypnosis permit. However, because other authorities in Wales have received such requests, again, it seemed prudent to have a fee structure in place should that request arise. The calculated fees are based on estimated timings, but would need to be reviewed on the basis of experience should any application arise. The proposed hypnosis licence fees are attached at Appendix 3 up to this report, which again is on page 140 of your bundle. Neighbouring authorities do not currently have fees set for this function, so therefore no comparison is possible. Again, no applications are expected, but we would rather err on the side of caution should they be. So general fee setting, the proposed fees have been calculated to represent costs of delivering each licensed service based on the best available evidence and information. In practice, the proposed fees slightly underrepresent the actual costs because we are working on costs for 2019-20 because we can't yet work on 2021. Members will note that there are some differences between the fees proposed to charge and the fees charged by neighbouring authorities in relation to Gambling Act fees. And there are a number of reasons for this. Again, it could be that some authorities are not calculating full cost recovery. Costs may differ the way that they are calculated, and the work upon which the fees are based may be different. Section 6 of the report. In consultation with preparing this report and the proposed fees for you today, officers have worked with the finance team to establish officer costs. Again, there are risks. Local authorities may be criticised in the press or be taken to judicial review in respect of licence fee increases. However, this needs to be balanced against possible criticisms where local authorities fail to fund services needed by licence holders or to protect public safety. The evidence upon which proposed licence fees are based will be retained for 7 years in case there are queries. Actions to be taken. The suggestions and directions of the committee will be followed by officers. And the measures of success is that this reporting process is completed in time for implementation of the licence fees on the 1st of April. So to conclude, certain licence fees are deemed to be non-statutory in that local authorities can determine what or whether to charge. This report refers to the statutory licences fallen to the authority for determination, but for non-statutory fees, and explains the methodology used to calculate licence fees and present those fees for members for consideration and approval as appropriate. It is recommended that the members approve the proposed fees fallen to this committee for determination, or, should they not approve any proposed fees, indicate their reasons for doing so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Members, any questions? Councillor Evans.
Yeah, it's only 5.12, page 132. Item D, are we about to use that thing about the reduce or increase in the amount for the licensing period?
Sorry, can you just refer to this section again, please?
Yeah, it's 5.12, page 132.
5.12D.
D. Yeah. Just to ask, do we use that well calculating? Because if so, was there a reduction last year or an increase in profit?
There was no profit.
Okay, any other questions? Right then, the recommendations are on page 136. That members are asked to approve the proposed statutory licensing fees. Do you all agree? Okay. Thank you. Right, we now go on to agenda item 7, which is on pages 151 to 192, which is approval of proposed non-statutory fees. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. This is the fourth and final report to be presented to you today. So the purpose of this report is for the approval of the proposed non-statutory fees for 2020-2021 for scrap metal, street trading, animal establishment licensing and sex establishment licensing. So if I can draw your attention to section 4 of the report, certain licence fees are deemed to be non-statutory in that local authorities can determine what or whether to charge. This report refers to the licence fees in relation to scrap metal, both dealers and collectors. So this is your scrap metal sites and your collectors that collect on the street. Street trading, so your temporary street trading pitches, so your pop-up markets, and your permanent street trading pitches, so more your burger vans that are parked on the side of the street. Animal establishment licensing and sex establishment licensing, which covers shops, cinemas and places of entertainment. The background and methodologies around licence fee setting has previously been used to determine a range of licences agreed by the committee and is explained at Appendix 1 to this report, which is page 161 of your bundle. Again, the calculated licence fees are intended to be a fair reflection of the actual costs of administering and enforcing each licence, in much the same way as anyone would expect to pay a reasonable fee for a service that they receive. However, it's not always possible to achieve full cost recovery in terms of overall licensing functions because some activities do not relate directly to the administration and enforcement of licences, and that would relate to providing information and advice and freedom of information requests. The calculated costs used for these proposed fees are again calculated using figures available for the period 2019-2020, as any pay reward has not been finalised, and other costs for the period 2020 to 2021. Under the Constitution, the setting of fees levied for licences falls to the Licensing Committee for determination. General fee setting principles we discussed in report number 3. Would you like me to go back through the reasoning behind that? Okay. And again, the underpinning costs are the same as we've mentioned before. Costs incurred by the authority to establish any policies, procedures, fee setting, etc. Specific licence steps relating to each type of licence, and hourly operational costs to the authority for each officer involved. Section 5.2 of the report relates to scrap metal licence fees, both dealers and collector licences. Both relatively straightforward in that they involve similar amounts of work regardless of the size of the business. The proposed scrap metal licence fees are attached as Appendix 2, which is page 167 of your bundle. And a comparison table with neighbouring authorities is attached at Appendix 2A, which is page 169 of your bundle. There are 6 scrap metal dealer sites in Torvine, and up-to-date information as of today, there are now only 7 collectors currently licensed with Torvine. 2 applications for renewal are due within the 2020-21 period. Section 5.3 of the report refers to street trading, and as mentioned previously, there are different types of street trading which include permanent pitches, short-term seasonal trading and also single-day trading. Although local authorities are not required to do so, separate fees have been calculated to take into account different types of trading. This is intended to be fairer to those businesses wishing to trade for short periods and encourage applications. The proposed fees have been increased to reflect the changes in time to deal with these that have been noted since the last fee calculations. For members' information, we are seeing an increase in mobile street trader applications, whereby these permanent pitches are the ones that trade from the side of the road, but we have seen a significant increase of the mobile type that go from business to business trading. So those costs have been considered in setting these fees. The proposed street trading licence fees are attached at Appendix 3, which is page 171 of your bundle, and a comparison table with neighbouring authorities is attached at Appendix 3A. There are around 28 street traders applying annually for renewed licences. Again, this number can vary depending on whether or not people continue with that licence, as some people trade for short periods of time. 5.4 of the report refers to animal establishment licensing. The types of licence covered by this regime is boarding, cat and dog, breeding, dogs only, dangerous wild animals, performing animals, pet shops, riding establishments and zoos. Again, although local authorities are not required to do so, separate fees have been calculated to take into account that some businesses are much smaller and less complex than others. This is intended to be fairer to licence holders that have a small or simple operation and encourage applications. The proposed animal establishment licensing fees are attached at Appendix 4 to this report, which is page 175 of your bundle. Given the complexity of the licensing regime, no comparison data with neighbouring authorities has been included, particularly as the inspection regime in neighbouring authorities is known to differ in some cases. For Torvine, when we receive a new application, we always take with us a vet to look at the suitability of any proposed licence, and those vet fees have been incorporated into the costs for certain licences which are presented to you today. In relation to the more complex licences, you will note that licence fees for the vet fees have been included as additional costs because we would need to source a specialist vet. The number of animal establishment licences is specified in 5.4.6 of this report, given the number and type of licences currently licensed by Torvine. 5.5 refers to sex establishment licensing. Currently, this authority has no sex establishment premises, although we have received one application in the past. The proposed fees are therefore based on estimated timings, but again would need to be reviewed on the basis of experience should any application be received. Sex shop applications have proven relatively uncontroversial in the past. However, more of a consultation response would be anticipated in respect of a sex cinema, and possibly controversy could arise with an application for a sex entertainment premises such as a lap dancing club. The proposed sex establishment licence fees are attached as Appendix 5 of this report, which is page 179 of your bundle, and a comparison table with neighbouring authorities is attached at Appendix 5A. No applications are expected, but again, the regime is there should they be. Section 5.6 of the report outlines the general principles behind fee setting, which we've already discussed in previous reports. Would anyone like me to go through this again, or are we happy to... Yeah, okay. So in consultation in bringing this report to you today on the proposed fees, officers have worked with the finance team to establish officer hourly costs. Again, there are risks. Reputational risks. Local authorities may be criticised in the press or be taken to judicial review in respect of licence fee increases. However, this needs to be balanced against possible criticisms where local authorities fail to fund services needed by licence holders or to protect public safety. The evidence upon which these proposed fees are based will be retained for 7 years should there be any queries. The suggestions and directions of the committee will be taken by officers. So to conclude, certain licence fees are deemed to be non-statutory in that local authorities can determine what or whether to charge. This report refers to the non-statutory licence fees fall into the local authority for determination, explains the methodology used to calculate those fees and presents those fees for member consideration and approval as appropriate. It is recommended that members approve the proposed fees fall into the committee for determination, or if they do not approve the fees, indicate their reasons for doing so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Carroll?
I note that our street trading fees are, well, considerably less than all of the other authorities. Given that we are calculating these fees on a no-profit basis, and we are using information in the calculation that is out of date in the sense that we're using last year's data, it strikes me that it would be reasonable to make a small increase in all of these fees, well, certainly all of them except the one-day event fees, going forward. At least in an attempt to calculate. And when you look at a lot of our other fees, they've gone up. These fees seem to me to have gone up by virtually the same amount as our statutory fees, and these are non-statutory fees. So presumably we don't have to calculate these in the same way as we calculate statutory fees. And it does seem to me that we are doing ourselves an injustice in that we are charging such low fees compared to our neighbouring authorities.
These fees have been calculated using the methodologies that are available based on officer hourly cost. We have increased compared to the period 2019 to 2020. Yes, it has been marginal, it is quite small, but these fees have been scrutinised and taken into account time taken to advise and produce these licences. So these fees are a true reflection of that process.
Yeah, I suppose my point is I can understand that, but when we see Blaen y Gwent charging virtually double, in fact more than double what we're charging, Caerphilly are almost double, and then you've got Monmouth who are charging 30% more than we are. It strikes me that we have an ability here to make a profits, probably the wrong. We have an opportunity here to equalise the costs to this authority that perhaps we should be charging.
They hand over to the legal officer in a minute.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate where you're coming from in relation to this, Councillor Karen, I really do. But I'm assuming, Claire, that you have sat down, you've calculated this, therefore you have justified the amounts. We don't know how the other local authorities have undertaken that exercise, what they've taken into account either. But the purpose of doing this is so if we are scrutinised, then we can justify the fees.
That's correct, yes. Obviously I can't speak for other local authorities on how they calculate their fees, but these fees have been scrutinised and are a true reflection of the costs that are incurred.
Is that okay? Okay. Any other questions, members? Right, then we go to page 158 then, but the recommendation is approve the proposed non-statutory licensing fees. Are you all happy to do that? Yeah. Okay. And thank you. Can I thank Claire and the team for all their hard work on these reports. There's a lot of detail gone into them and lots of hours spent, so thank you.
Thank you,
Right.
Chair.
That's good. Right, so agenda item 8, the date of the next meeting is the 23rd of April 2020. We'll go on to item number 9 now, which is exclusion of press and public. So, off the webcast, please.